So welcome back to a new Game Stuff episode, and this is some of the stuff I picked up in the last few months on the show, and I really want to show you guys some of this stuff today. Some of it's really, really cool. Now, up first is, it goes along with some of my other LP records, vinyls, and that's Streets of Rage 2. Streets of Rage 2, a great Mega Drive Genesis game, Yuzo Koshiro. Data discs at their finest here, folks. Let's have a look at this. Beautiful slipcase right here. Really nice artwork in here. Never mind the damn music, which is great. But look at some of this stuff that's in there of the original artwork. It's just wonderful. This showed up, and whenever I get a data disc, in the mail, I'm like, oh my god! Oh, look at this. Just wonderful. All the gang there, that's so great. As I say, never mind the music, and I'm a big fan of vinyl video game records now. I'm just so into these things. They're so unbelievable. Like, look at this record. Yeah, I call it a record. Back in England, in the 70s, we called them records. I'm behind the times. I'm an older guy, so don't hold it against me. They're vinyls, but look at this. It's meant to look all dirtied up. It's just so fantastic, and I gotta thank Data Discs for just doing such a wonderful job. And I don't know, guys, I think they may have sold out of this one as well. I remember I linked to their other ones that they did, and they'd sold out. So if they have, I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it goes. You gotta get these things right away or they do sell out. Now, here's something unusual. I'll get into this first. I never experiment with controllers. I usually use the official, like the official Sony controller, the official Nintendo controller. I never go for really a third party. And what happened is I'm playing Street Fighter and I'm liking it, but a guy on Facebook recommends, his name was John Weston. He's like, oh, you gotta try this controller. I think you'd really like it. And I'm like, okay, like what's the deal with it? It's called the FC4 Fighting Commander. They didn't send me this. This is not an advertisement for them in any regard, because I do have mixed feelings about it. I really do. It's for PlayStation 3 and 4, and I just want to show it to you, and I think you'll understand why I wanted this for Street Fighter. Let's have a look at this right here. I'll just put that towards you guys. So look how they have the buttons laid out right here. Just like the good old days. On the Sega Saturn controller, stuff like that. All your, you can have all your punches up here, or all your kicks down here, Street Fighter style, to mimic the arcade, unless you have an arcade stick, which I don't. And I'm much more, enjoy using the gamepad for playing fighting games on consoles. It's always kind of been that way. I always use the arcade sticks on the actual arcade itself. But so I got this controller. It finally arrived, and I tried it out. And you know what? It's not bad. It's not bad. I tried it for a few nights, and maybe I was just having some frustrating Street Fighter matches, but I'm like, I don't know if this is the controller for me. I don't know if it's the controller for me. It's really cool. I love the button layouts. Everything feels good, like doing fireballs and uppercuts and, all that kind of, and hurricane kicks. Everything works out really great for me, being a Ken player. I like it, but you know what? I went back to the PS4 controller because I've just become so used to it that when you learn a controller, especially for a fighting game, and then you try to change that, it takes a little bit to get used to, and I don't know if I ever got used to this. I don't know if it's the problem is with me or the controller. Isn't that interesting? I still don't know to this day, but an interesting controller. If you're looking for a different kind of button layout for a PS4 or PS3 for fighting games, give it a shot. It's something different to try, right? So, alrighty, one game that I was talking about a little bit ago, games I'd love to see again, maybe on a console or something like that, was Advance Wars. And I played and owned all the Advance Wars, but I never had the first game. I always borrowed it off a friend of mine back in the day, and so it's so nice to get a beautiful little mint copy of Advance Wars on Game Boy Advance. And it sounds like, I'm going to go back for a moment here, is that I remember seeing this artwork for the Game Boy Advance and going, wow, this is ushering in a new era for handhelds and for graphics. And I remember seeing Advance Wars, and it really was a bit of a system seller for me. It really was. As soon as I saw, the strategy game and how it was working out, I'm like, I'm sold. I'm in. And so this actually means a lot. I'm really happy to have Advance Wars. Now, you saw Kim trying to play it. Dark Souls 3. This game is incredible. This game is I'd say 8 or 9, out of 10 for sure. Have I liked the other Souls games? Yes, but they were punishing, and I don't know if the earlier ones were for me. I know they were for my friends. My friends love the games. I could never get down with the program. I always thought I just sucked, and the games were just punishing me, and I suck. It's just I didn't have a great relationship with them. Where Bloodborne, when I played that, and I got some real good tips from friends of mine how to play the game and really how it's supposed to play out. It was a great introduction to the series more for me, Bloodborne. It was like, I found it a little bit easier. I knew what I was doing. I fell in love with the world. I just adored the game. I thought it was great. Now, this comes out and I'm like, oh my god, do I really want to delve into this world again? Is this really going to be for me? Especially watching Kim play it for the first time. I'm like, oh man, this is insane. Here's what I really think about Dark Souls 3. This is a very accessible Dark Souls game. The other ones, to me, were a little bit tough. This game feels perfectly balanced. To be honest with you, it feels a little bit easier than the other ones. I've had nothing but a pleasurable experience with this one, and where do I get into it? It's just that maybe it's because of Bloodborne. This one, it was a great introduction into this for me, and now I think I know what I'm doing now. I really think I know what I'm doing with my equipment and upgrading and grinding, and there's a lot of great grinding in this game. This game is wonderful for that, and I'm going to say it, and I'm not going to show any spoilers from later on in the game because I'm later on in the game. Some of the boss encounters are just fucking amazing. But they're not just amazing in graphically how they look, it's how they challenge you and how you react to that challenge. I used to just feel defeated back in the day, but now I realize that it's not unfair, it's just I was playing badly. And now that I play a lot better in these games, wow, now I can when I die, I'm like, I realize why I died. Maybe I shouldn't do that next time. And I'll go, and sure, I fight some bosses like 10 or 14 times. Sure I do. But when you beat a boss in Dark Souls, it's the most exhilarating feeling you will ever have in a gaming experience beating a boss. I'm going to go out that far and say that because it's so challenging at times. It pushes you to your limits. I remember fighting this one boss, this big tree boss. It's an optional boss, and I could not defeat it. And I was like, why? I know exactly how to defeat it. Why am I not doing this? And I got frustrated. I was playing it over and over one night, and I said, forget it. Screw this. I'm not doing this. I got up the next morning, straight back to it, and I finished it the first time going back. And it was euphoric. You just feel like $1 million. I felt so good afterwards finishing that boss. And that's the thing. I'll give it my advice for the game. If you're feeling frustrated, walk away. If you're like, I can't do this fucking boss, I can't do this section, walk away, do it the next day, take a breather. If somebody gets really nuts, and I need to take a breather once in a while, and with Dark Souls 3, I've taken a few breathers, I've come back very refreshed, and I seem to do a lot better, but I haven't even talked about the graphics. I mean, the graphics are so perfectly, gothically horrific and scary and just perfectly atmospheric. If the character monster designs are fitting, they're horrifying. When you see some of these enemies coming towards you, you quake a little bit inside. You're like, oh Jesus, I have to take on that. And it's just, I cannot say enough about the world setting. It is a fully realized, beautiful thing. It's a scary thing. It's a world that's very creepy to run around in. But, what you could really say about it, it's very much like a very dark Zelda game. A very dark Zelda game. It's just the environments are scary, spooky, surreal, twisted, gross. I think that's the best way I can describe it. And just beautiful. I've been amazed at looking at some of the castles in the distance, and it's just wonderful. So yes, do I have a lot of good things to say? I really want to talk about Dark Souls 3, and if you've ever been on the edge and you're like, I don't know, I'd say this is a good place to jump in. It's a very, very well-balanced game. I actually feel like going back to the older Souls games now because I feel like a bit more of a veteran now. I really do. I feel like I'm holding my own. I really am. And I recommend Dark Souls 3. Give it a shot. You know what? If you're unsure, go rent it. See how much it kicks your ass and if you can take it. If you can, go and buy the game. It's really, really good. Next up, I got to thank Limited Run Games for sending me this. New and tasty Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey on the PlayStation 4. I believe there's a few more copies. I think about 1,000 when I got this one. So they were selling out. They were selling it, oh my god, last week. So I don't know, again, if they're sold out. A lot of these things that I'm getting these days have a very no pun intended, a very limited run. You have to jump on them right away. And I think some of these games are going to be collector's items because they have such a limited run. So, very cool. I'm going to try this out absolutely later on. Now, I want to thank my friend Jimbo of the Retro Game Lounge, and he was selling some of his TurboGrafx games, and he gave me a hell of a deal on these ones. Never mind the damn Canadian dollar versus US dollar is crap right now, but I wanted to talk about a few of these games. Some of them I've talked about before, some of them I never have. Let's get an obvious one out of the way. I have never owned an English release of Ninja Spirit. I got the Japanese version. I borrowed friends of mine's copies back in the day, but I've never had an official release of this game. And it's in my top 10 TurboGrafx games of all time. It's a wonderful side view, ninja game. But Ninja Spirit is one of my favorite ninja games for older consoles. Like there was so many ninja games back then. There was Ninja Gaiden, the Ninja Warriors. It just Shadow of the Ninja. It never stops. But the Ninja Spirit was such a fun action game that I played the living crap out of back in the day. I finished it, I don't even know how many times. It's so much fun. High recommendation on the TurboGrafx. Now, these games are unusual on the TurboGrafx. I don't know if I'd recommend them. I think I would recommend JJ and Jeff more than this one here, but JJ and Jeff is a couple of Japanese comedians, and they decided to bring this game out with some potty humor. It's a really weird game. And of all the games that they brought out for the TurboGrafx US market, I always scratched my head about JJ and Jeff and said, why did they bring this out? I guess they thought it showcased large characters in a kind of a side view action game. It's weird. I've always thought it's weird. Is it fun? Yeah, it's kind of fun, but it's kind of weird. I never got with the program with JJ and Jeff as much as I would have liked to, but it was one that I always saw in video game magazines and screenshots. I'm like, JJ and Jeff, oh my god. The TurboGrafx was doing unusual things. It was bringing out weird, quirky Japanese games. I couldn't be against it. I was interested. In fact, I was fascinated back in the day, and then I played it, and I'm like, oh, this is really weird. So I got what I, kind of asked for in the end of the day, but it's a pretty cool game. I've never had an American version of the game, so very happy to have this. I remember when the TurboGrafx first came out. It's a game I don't think I've ever talked about. PACLAND. I remember seeing this cover. I remember seeing screenshots of the game, being extremely excited about it, going, oh wow, it's a side view, Pac-Man game and with cartoony graphics, and for some reason it captured my imagination. And then I played the game and I was like, oh, this is kind of charming, but it wasn't quite what I was hoping it would be in my mind. For some reason I was thinking it would be a lot more fun. It's not a bad game by any means, but it's not an 8 out of 10 game. It's a very average action-y game, and I hate to say I was disappointed by PACLAND. I blew it up in my mind. That's what I did. I was imagining all these great things of when I'd finally play the game. And I played it, I was like, oh, this isn't bad. So on to some movies now. And these are true classics. I have this one right here, Ladyhawke. I had this in Laserdisc. I've watched it on Laserdisc for so many years. I'm like, I should really get it on Blu-ray. And you can get a lot of Blu-rays now for $10 or $12. And I picked this up on Amazon for really cheap. And I will watch this again. Me and Kim watched it a couple of years ago. I say on Laserdisc, and really, a really classic movie with Rutger Hauer, Michelle Pfeiffer, Matthew Broderick. It's kind of a sword and sorcery type of tale in there. But I've gotten into so many arguments with people over this particular movie. I even remember getting in an argument with Rob's brother in a Blockbuster video over this movie. I'm one of the maybe I'm one of the few people. I adore the soundtrack of this movie. It's, can I say, to defend it to begin with, the soundtrack feels very different than the movie while you're watching it. Combined, it seems very odd and unusual. But it, for me, it was like the 80s. I embraced it. I don't know. I enjoyed the clash of this weird musical style with what was going on screen a lot of times, which was a medieval movie. I thought it was really cool and a heck of a interesting experiment that I think paid off. But some people didn't think it paid off. I got into this huge argument with Rob's brother. Oh God, it must be about 15 years ago, 16 years ago. I went on Blockbuster Video and we're looking at all the videos and I'm like, oh, there's Ladyhawke. He's like, oh yeah, it's a good movie, but the soundtrack sucks. And I'm like, what? And I'm somebody, I get very argumentative in a fun way about things that I really like. And I was like, how can you hate the soundtrack? He's like, oh, it's weird. It doesn't make sense in the movie. I'm like, fuck you. We're laughing about it. And then recently, I got into another argument with a friend of mine in real life about this. I hate the soundtrack. Though I'm like, holy shit, I'm gonna lose it. But the movie is a beautiful movie. It's a really nice little story, and I won't even say what it's about. Just if you've never seen Ladyhawke, check it out. Download it. Buy the Blu-ray. Blu-ray's cheap. Now it must be about 2 years ago now. I talked to one of my friends, Oliver, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to see Howard the Duck on Blu-rays. Is it on Blu-ray? He's like, yeah, there's a German release. It'll play on your PlayStation. I'm like, excellent. And I bought it, and it didn't. And he's like, oh shit, it doesn't, sorry. There finally is an official release of Howard the Duck. Now, what do I think about Howard the Duck? It's not a great movie, but to me, it's a classic movie of my childhood. It's a movie I watched, and I remember seeing the trailers, and I think we all thought the movie was going to be huge, and it bombed really big. And I gotta say, the strangest thing about this movie is a girl in this movie nearly fucks a duck. That nearly happened in this movie. I'm not making that up. Watch the movie. She nearly fucks a duck. It was surreal. I remember as a kid going, what the fuck is going on? So I had to buy the Blu-ray. I can't wait to watch it. Really. I'm just ending up with a couple of books here. This is one that I saw another YouTuber talking about called Empire of Imagination. Gary Gygax and the Birth of Dungeons and Dragons. Look at that cover. Looks like something out of Unearthed Arcana, for anybody who remembers that book. But this is the story about how Gary Gygax came up with Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously he was into like military simulation games, war games, and then he adapted it into, by adding dragons, monsters, and stuff like that. And he completely changed it and made it his own thing. And I'm really looking forward to reading this. What a revolutionary game concept Dungeons and Dragons was, and we owe a lot to Gary Gygax. We really do. I personally do. I've enjoyed the game so much over the years. I've had so much fun with my friends. It's just been something that's just really opened up our imaginations, and that's why it's called Empire of Imagination. What a wonderful title, and I can't wait to read into this, and I'm definitely going to in the coming weeks. Now, I haven't bought any Dungeons & Dragons books in a long time because I haven't had a chance to play Dungeons & Dragons in a long time. I've been so busy. But this was a must-have book. This is a must-have book. I have never talked about it. When I first got 4th edition, you know, I hadn't played Dungeons & Dragons for like 18 years, and I got back with 4th edition, and now, you know, moved up to 5th edition. But when I got 4th edition, there was no Ravenloft. And that was always a module that I always wanted to play with my friends, because I love the idea of going up against, you know, Dracula and, you know, that gothic setting. I just thought it'd be so much fun. And with 4th edition, there wasn't a Ravenloft campaign book that was released. They released every other motherfucking book in the universe, but they never released that one. So they finally released this. You know, it's called The Curse of Strahd. It is the official Ravenloft for 5th edition. And I can't wait to look into this. But back on 4th edition, I played, I adapted and created my own Ravenloft campaign. I just was reading bits online, checking out the old module, and I adapted it. And there was also a character of Strahd, you know, that I could adapt into, you know, from the 4th edition books into my campaign. And I just used monsters and wolves and stuff like that, and it all really worked out really well. And there must have been about 8 of us playing that, and I had that game going for weeks, and wonderful times playing Ravenloft. And Ravenloft is such a great world that I want to go back to it. It really is gothic fantasy. I'm going to use that terminology, and it's really cool. And oh, look at this map here. When I got this book, and you get the map of Bavaria right here. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That is a really nice map. And look at this. Here we go. Ravenloft Castle. Jesus. So nice. My only nitpick, and you're going to think I'm an asshole for saying this, the cover's okay. It's okay. It's not as good as the original Ravenloft or some of the boxed editions, or, you know, or even the boxed, you know, game that you could play with your friends. I thought the cover was a little lacking, but it's only a cover, right? Don't judge a book by its cover, they say, but, you know, I do fucking do it anyways. And I had my eye on this one, this book for a long time. Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Right here. And this is just an adventurer's guide to the Sword Coast, an area in Dungeons and Dragons, and it just goes into a lot of the details of the politics, the characters, some of the monsters, the history of it all. It's one of those types of books, and if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you're very familiar with these types of books, but there is a really good example where a cover sold me. I saw the cover and I'm like, Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, I'm sold. I had to pick this up, and yeah, fantastic. Both these books kind of really make me want to play Dungeons and Dragons again and really get back into that world. So guys, that's just a few of the things I picked up for this Game Stuff episode. So anyways guys, until next time.